Nice to meet you.
Makes such a difference.
So, good morning, everyone.
Morning.
A big and sincere thank you for coming out in a rainy day here in Sioux Falls to join us. So thanks for those that are here in person, and welcome virtual friends. We've got lots of folks online today, so welcome everyone. And again, a big and sincere thank you for coming together in this Culture Cohort community to talk about a really important topic in business and leadership today, and technically always, right? So my name is Rana DeBoer. I am the Chief Impact Officer at Keystone Group International. We are a group of business consultants who help you really align business and human needs to create those exceptional workplace cultures, to attract and retain that talent that we all need to keep in our workforces, and to drive those great business results that we're all looking for to make that impact that we want in our businesses, in people, with our customers, in the community. So I want to first give just a quick thank you to Southeast Tech for providing a beautiful venue and facility that is technologically wired with great support to help us make the event happen in a really good way. And also to our sponsor, HR Asset, for giving us some good coffee and healthy snacks this morning. So without further ado, I also want to give a huge thank you to our two panelists for joining us in a great discussion this morning. So Erica Beck, Chief of Staff to Mayor Paulton Hagen at the City of Sioux Falls. So Erica, thank you for being with us. And Jennifer Reese, Chief Employee Experience Officer at First National Bank. Thank you for joining us. Let's start out by talking about what well-being means in your business, for business, and in your organization, and kind of how you would rate what that looks like today. Do you want to kick us off?
Sure. Well, we are a family-owned independent bank at First National Bank, in which I believe, after being there now 3 whole years, which is pretty exciting, that this has been in the fabric of the organization: well-being, resilience, taking care of each other, taking care of yourselves, understanding that family, it is a blend, right? Especially after we look at the world that we've been in and how life and work are more blended than ever. Creating that culture of overall well-being couldn't be more foundational in a deliberate, strategic way. And whether it was the creator who gave us the insight to make this very deliberate, strategic choice at the point in which we did, we launched on right before COVID began. We launched a very deliberate strategic effort. Again, this has been a fabric of our organization, so this wasn't something new, but we didn't have the common language. We didn't know how to coach to it in a way that was going to be purposeful and powerful for every individual, for every manager to have the opportunity to have the tools, to have the conversations, because it's soft in some ways, but how do you draw it then to the bottom line? How do you show that having a culture of well-being and engagement really actually produces the productivity and the end results? And of course, at the end of the day, we still have to make money to support the community in which we live in, right? It's intertwined. You can't peel them apart. And we're so fortunate that we live in such a beautiful place as the city of Sioux Falls and the Sioux Empire. So again, prior to COVID in January, we kicked off an effort across the bank to invite everyone to join us with a foundation of well-being, where we got centered on the different pillars to create that common language around career, which is really your purpose. And as we know, people show up to work coming with a calling, a hunger to want to have a purpose-driven life. They want to have purpose both at home and at work. You can't divorce those things. Our work family, our home family, our community families, our faith families, it all is what builds us to be a resilient culture. So we knew we had to put deliberate effort behind each of those pillars. So career being one, social being another. We have fun at work. We really, truly do. It bleeds over into how we show up, I believe, in our communities. The financial aspect, you can't ignore that. Beyond the purpose of career, we knew that our teammates through these turbulent times needed to have an understanding that they were taken care of. Financially, psychologically, it was safe for them to have conversations that maybe they never had before, and that the leaders cared at a whole nother level, in which, again, I believe we showed up very well. Physical, again, it's not all bike and broccoli, right? And so understanding that well-being is powerful beyond just taking care of the health of what you think of as physical health, right? The pendulum swings 10 years ago. That's what healthcare plans we focused on. Now we understand the capacity that's built in each of these pillars. The community piece, again, we don't survive without a healthy community. So we believe strongly in giving back, in servanthood, and in selfless service, not at the price of the human behind that, but in a way that we can build others up and make this just a great place to be. So with those pillars, we had, sometimes you're voluntold to be on committees within an organization because it's new and we need that power and that energy and those champions. We put it through an application process. And so we know, no kidding, that those folks, those teammates with their fire in their belly, they were just this change agent of positivity that was contagious. And it continues to grow and build today. And it's one of our strongest groups of leaders across the organization because they're influencing. It's not by position, it's by the pillars. It's by having a common language to speak to folks, to get them passionate about, you know what, maybe live outside your comfort zone a little, break that paradigm and jump into being a part of a committee. If you're up to leading, let's do it. And we put we have an incredible structure in which we have a teammate who's here with us today. Thank you, Angie, for leading those efforts and helping build leaders to be these great advocates, educated advocates for well-being. COVID didn't ignore us, right? Like everybody else, it was non-discriminatory. And we believe by having that powerful, we focused on each pillar separately. We've got to meet people where they're at. We had to expose them in new ways because we couldn't go out and just get our hands dirty and be that social piece that part of that community and that servanthood is. So we found new ways of giving and doing and living and breathing this well-being culture, this foundational piece of our culture to the highest levels, which proved out in our engagement scores. And so we were do you do the Gallup Q12? We're a Gallup organization, believe strongly in the valid and reliable data it offers us, and we are able to trend it over time. And so it had been measuring engagement in that way for a number of years and effectively working each year to gain greater engagement by understanding, listening, asking, what do our teammates want, or what are we missing, and not be afraid to look at those gaps in real, honest ways. We hit 77% engaged at the height of COVID. I should be hearing screaming and yelling and raising the bar, right? Unheard of. And we're in the financial, and you can shred it out like that. And in financial institutions, that covers banks, trusts, departments, all the rest. The average is around 44%, I think. So talk about knock it out of the park. Grand slam. Baseball fans, go Twins. I just think that there's such power and energy in then explaining those results and letting people live in that celebration with us. I still get emotional. It's such a beautiful understanding of how the power of engagement drives results, because then guess what? We had our best year ever, 135 years. Tell me that doesn't add up, right? It does. And that's not without the deliberate effort of a multitude of factors in our strategic vision, but there was a no kidding from the leaders. Again, it's a part of our fabric, but from the leaders all the way down, it wasn't one more thing. It was a part of who we are and what we do. So again, that authenticity just continued to show up for us through some of the most challenging times in which we saw the resilience of our teammates step up, but it's not without great care for where they were and what we needed to do to provide for them.
Incredible results. And again, I can't help but to think that's pouring into the capacity of people, right? You're pouring into their foundational capacity to be able to work through, live through, keep driving, stay cohesive, collective. We'll probably talk about this today too, but keeping our social and mental above the line, right? It's okay to go a little bit below the line, but we don't stay there too long because we've got this movement, we've got this water that we swim in, the culture in our organization that keeps us healthy and well and keeps us solid and moving forward. And I just have to share, so your foundation that you used is Rath and Harder.
Yes.
Yep. Who are incredible authors of a whole suite of books that you guys would really love. And none of them are hard reads. That's the best part, right? Easy reads, but it's the 5 essential elements of well-being. And while I was with the city, this was the book that we did our foundational work off of too, but I just have to read this to you guys because I think you'll love it. When you referred to each of those elements of well-being. So well-being is about the combination of our love for what we do each day, the quality of our relationships, the security of our finances, the vibrancy of our physical health, and the pride we take in what we have contributed to our communities. Most importantly, it's about how these elements interact. That's the capacity of people. And even in business, we have to pour into that because like you said, that's what gives us the above the line, innovative, collaborative, passionate work. Like we're in it to win it together and to endure through some things. My gosh, you said all kinds of amazing things. Erica, what would you add?
Well, first of all, I love the broccoli or bike and broccoli. I did write that down, Jen.
Have to
Thank
owe it to
you.
Rand.
Yeah, that being
I figured
well,
that came from Randa Ford.
being well. And I remember making a big screen at the city with like a bicycle on one side. I'm laughing. I'm looking at Marty and laughing, and a big piece of broccoli on the other. And I'm like, being well is more than just bicycling and broccoli. Like there's this whole iceberg underneath there of good that helps us flourish and be well as leaders. Yes.
Well, first of all, thank you for having us this morning, and thank you all for attending today. A couple of things. I just want to share a quick story because the evolution of well-being is still a work in progress at the city of Sioux Falls, just like I'm sure it is for First National Bank and all organizations. But when Rana started with the city, we had a challenging, I think, concept of what well-being was at that time, to the degree that, you know, it was a broccoli and bicycle concept at first. I remember carrying in some cupcakes one day to City Hall as a gift for a team member's celebration of some sort and running into Rana in the hallway and thinking, oh, great. She's gonna scowl at me, you know, but that ultimately was where we were at that point in time as employees in that organization. And thankfully, she was able to showcase, because of leadership in our HR department, that it was much more than that. And based on the programming that she did while she was there, especially within fire and our police department, you know, the productivity and our overall well-being of our officers and the folks within the fire department changed dramatically. And since then, it's been an evolution and it's been a work in progress. And one of the challenges that we have in our organization ultimately is we have 1,300 full-time team members, give or take, and just over 200 part-time team members. And it's a lot of people to harness and point in the right direction when it comes to well-being efforts. And then add on top of that, that leadership is absolutely going to change every 8 years. That changes well-being and the prioritization of well-being in the organization if you don't have systems developed and in place that exist without necessarily leadership supporting them. And that can be really difficult. And the organization has certainly seen challenges as a result of that. So over the last 4 years that I've been back at the city of Sioux Falls since 2018, we've tried to re-emphasize the importance of well-being. And we've done that in a lot of different ways. But I think primarily one of the things that we've been able to accomplish, and that Rana certainly helped us with, was making sure that our team members, especially within our executive team, understand the importance of that intersection between culture and our organization's business strategy and how they can't be separated. Right. And that can be challenging for people, especially when you're in the day-to-day grind of your work and your jobs, and you're just trying to make sure that you're meeting the needs of the community. It's difficult to take a step back sometimes and think about how we do our work. And that matters, right? Because it impacts all of us. And so we're not immune to the challenges that have occurred over the last couple of years. And that's certainly led to a lot of burnout amongst our team members, and not always because of a strain on capacity, although sometimes it is. It's, sometimes compounded because we haven't had as much emphasis on well-being and the whole person and how we as individuals in our organization should own that. That was one of the things that Rana did such a great job at when she was at the city, is reminding us all that we own our energy levels. We own our own development. And that's certainly a message that we're continuing to talk about at the city. Not everyone wants to hear that, though. It's a difficult conversation to have. And so ultimately, I think just for the city of Sioux Falls in general, we're on this evolutionary path. And my hope and intent moving forward over the next 4 years, while I know I'll be at the city, is to make sure that we have systems in place throughout the organization that help support culture, well-being, the intersection of all of that as it relates to our business strategy, so that no matter who the leader of the organization is set up for success moving forward.
So I really appreciate the evolution piece, right? Because we are always evolving as people, as families, as teams, as organizations, but you've got these priorities that are really important, is what I'm hearing from both of you. Like, this is foundational. This is foundational, and it's a priority. It's a pillar in the way that you do strategy, in the way that you help your business and your people be successful. And also what I'm hearing you is you have to create the conditions for it. We have to be deliberate and create the conditions. So your example of your well-being champions or your committee, I mean, talk about a system that you've put in place of these firecracker people who are passionate and excited about it, who can keep it alive. And I can't help but to say, I mean, and from prior experience and now working with other businesses, that is actually a leadership development opportunity.
Absolutely.
You are completely developing leaders in a very, very strong way to create that culture that you want into the future, not just today, but into the future. And so there's a couple great comments or examples right away about creating the conditions, because you have to have the environmental structure that supports it, the mindset and the structure. So Jen, tell us a little bit more about how you are creating the conditions to really fuel well-being in leaders and teams in the organization, hardwiring it into that culture.
Absolutely. So I believe it's beyond a goal. And those who know me well, I'm pretty hot in my pursuit around helping people, which we believe all of our teammates are leaders, regardless of rank or position, and that they have the opportunity every day to make a conscious choice to be better. And so what a beautiful thing, right? To have a culture that already has that foundation, that all of you are leaders, which all of you have children or have been a child. Let's get real, right? And from the moment that you were born, you had the power to choose. And so we have made a conscious choice as an organization, but it is just deeper than that. But we have made a conscious, deliberate, transparent choice in our strategic plan to make this bigger than just a one-year goal. This is a lifestyle that we hope that continues to build the greatness of what we are as Eagles at First National Bank. It does start with mindset. So we did have to bust some paradigms, as you said as well, Erica. Really creating a belief system that well-being is who we are. And once you have that belief system set, you align the behaviors that you're looking for, reward and recognize those to get the results you're looking for who we have become today. Now we're not there, right? The bar just keeps moving. We consider success if we're hitting 80% of the time. And then, think of your academic world, that was like a C, right? Like who wants to be a C? But do you know what the power of a C is? And we're just striving to be a B and an A. And of course, I believe we knock it out of the park more than, again, grand slams. We get a lot of grand slams. So it's pretty fun to celebrate, but it's not without knowing that there's a bottom 20% that we have to pay attention to and help bring along and coach and mentor. And so part of our belief system is developing leaders. We're very deliberate in our management approaches to ensure that everyone has a pathway, whether it's horizontal, whether it's vertical, whether it's stepping back to step up. It's an opportunity to learn and grow. And our champions are just that.
Yeah.
They have learned, they are trailblazers. And as you know, trailblazers have scars. You did not get here without them. And if you think you can bypass them, well, just wait, right? They will catch up with you. And it only makes you stronger and better. And guess what? More resilient. But you have to do the hard work yourself. So we've really focused in on the individual level of well-being, in which those pillars, again, having that common language, do you have purpose in your work? So having managers, leaders, or other champions in the bank, we're okay with that. Cross-functional teams mentoring each other is a beautiful thing, right? Again, COVID provided those opportunities because you might have been placed on a team that you had never worked on before, because that's what the organization demanded. And it was okay to try on new things. It was okay to stumble, fall, get bruised. And we were going to take that learning and help you grow in it. And whether that was challenging each other to the virtual 5K races, or that was challenging each other, like let's look at what healthy habits we can institute. We used our health plan significantly in regards to their well-being, what they could offer to us as resources. Of course, we tapped into Rana's talents. I knew that they were there. She wears her brand. We know that, right? So it's living, breathing, walking around. But you got to do the hard work, managers. You leaders, and again, I'll go back to leaders. Wear many hats. You're a manager. You're a mentor. You're a coach, and you just, which hat are you flipping off and on each day, right? In a matter of moments, you could be wearing them all. So how have we prepared you? Because life doesn't come with a playbook, to be able to walk into these situations, to be able to lift others up, to help them walk with them through this, because the challenges are real. All of us are not blind. We are not blind to understanding that mental illness is real. It's a topic people haven't wanted to talk about. It's real. You have to, as leader and managers, prepare your people to help know how to create the bridge to those who are the professionals. So that belief system, again, drives everything we do. And we have a belief system that well-being matters. We have a belief system that we are all leaders and we're accountable. We don't let people off the hook. I really believe that. We have never been more open and honest because the times have required it. They just have. And so what a beautiful thing. I always say there's a significant emotional event that propels you forward many times, and you think through your own personal lives that got you to where you are today, but you had to go through the pain. You had to go through that to be able to change, to become who you want to be tomorrow. So again, we believe in pulling the future forward, and well-being is just a foundation to it all.
Yeah. Those defining moments. Yep. Those defining moments. Jen and I have shared a passion for Angela Duckworth. We have too. And her book, Grit, right? It's about getting gritty. Sometimes we got to be really gritty. And when we collectively experience, a gritty time, it's amazing what we can do, rally together and to move forward. Okay. So the mindset piece though, that's how do you do that? You have to talk more about this. Like, how do you do that in your organization? We believe it's a leader's mindset. How do you create that? How are you doing that?
It's part of everyday conversations. So it's not just an event. You don't go to a half an hour training and believe that you've become someone great, right? Or that you know that you live it every day. It's calling each other out. It's being able to say, you know, today was a bad day. I had a really off day the other day. And my teammates are like, you probably should just go home. Like, go get yourself put back together so you can be better for the rest of us, because they know the capacity is in there. It's just an off day. Hey, we're human. Give ourselves permission to be human, right? And I just think there's that trust in where we're driving. There's compassion for one another. There's stability. You know that you can expect what you can expect each and every day from me as a leader. I'm hopeful that that's what my teammates see in me and what we bring out to the organization. We provide great hope. I used to believe hope wasn't a strategy. Heard that for years. Things you read. I'm like, oh, wait a second. They didn't live through COVID, right? So I feel like we could all write a chapter in a book about the hope that you created for others in their lives, but not only for others, but what it required of you, the hard work it required for you to have a hopeful mindset that we're going to lead through this. We're going to get there.
So hope is no longer a fluffy leadership
No.
competency.
No.
So you're building it. You're building these competencies into your training programs. It's
Correct.
got to be
It's
part
it's
of it.
foundational.
It's foundational.
It's foundational. It's
So-
it's in everything we do.
Yeah. Yep.
From our culture camp through our onboarding, how leaders and managers show up, our performance reviews, measure it,
Yep.
right? What gets measured matters.
Mm.
So there's no hiding.
Yeah.
The accountability is there, and we are not afraid to make a values choice and say you're no longer a fit for us. Or what did we do? What did we miss? How do we coach you in order to understand we've got your back? You're just one of these pillars might be off, right? And at least gives us a starting point for a conversation to say, hey, so what if we dream a little bit about helping you have more stability in your finances? Who wants to talk about that, right? We're a bank, we should know. Recognize people don't always know. So you have to create it.
Yeah.
But it's just who we are.
Yeah.
It's deliberate and intentional through our culture camps, through manager training. It's just who we are, but it didn't come without grind,
No.
without grit,
Right.
without a deliberate purpose, without others saying, do we really have to do this? You know,
Yeah.
I already know how to be healthy.
Yeah.
I'm well. See
Yeah.
me? Well, let's challenge that paradigm a little
Yeah.
bit and help broaden what you believe is what got you here, so that we can help get you there.
We're going to excavate a little, get you a little uncomfortable. We're going to create a vulnerable environment, and we're going to care. Well-being culture is about caring for people. I think that's what it is. It's that we're caring for people.
Well, and I do think, think of the example of the flight attendant, right? You've all at some point probably been on a airplane, or I'm assuming, otherwise you've seen it in the movies. Great. So they do the safety check, right? Before you're even allowed to take off. And you have to serve yourself first before you can help someone else with their mask, right? I think of that every time I'm on there. I'm like, remember, you matter. Saying yes to everyone else means saying no to yourself. So until you get yourself grounded enough, you might not be showing up as your best self in order to lead right where you're at. You are the culture champion for your organization. Don't think you're not. Don't think that you're the one who I don't get this piece right, or I'm not the perfect brand walker of well-being, because no one else is perfect either. So when you learn to live in that authenticity of who you are, how you show up, I would challenge yourself each day to give yourself that pep talk on your way to work, because the rest of the world will tell you no. So go ahead and give yourself permission.
Could you just record us all a pep talk, and then we can play that?
Absolutely.
That'd be great.
Yeah.
I could use that. pep talk.
Every morning, Jen.
Be careful what you ask for.
I take that pep talk. But honestly, you're creating the conditions for yourself.
Yeah. Yeah.
Own it, create the conditions kind of for yourself. How about you, Erica? What does creating the conditions look like?
A couple things. So when I think about this, I think about it for myself, but specifically as an organization, there's two things that we've been focused on over the last 4 years. And I'm not sure that we've stated it intentionally, meaning that I'm not certain that everyone would be able to state these two things themselves. But First and foremost, we have a leader, our mayor, who supports culture and who supports well-being, and he models that for the team, which I think is incredibly important. In addition to that, though, our executive team, that's where my focus has been over the last 4 years. We have folks that have been our legacy team members at the city, since I came back in 2018, meaning they've been in their seats for a number of different directors or a number of different mayors, excuse me. And they've, been challenged with that. And ultimately they needed to be poured into, just like our new directors on our executive team have needed to be poured into. And ultimately that has changed a lot of the culture within many of our departments. Those folks at that executive team level have been to some degree in survival mode, and we needed to pour into them resources, their own development resources, ultimately so that they could have a chance to operate at a level of peak performance that they haven't had in the past. And I think that in and of itself has done wonders for the organization. I could give you multiple examples of individuals in those departments that have reached out to me in various ways, just sharing with me the change that the department has experienced because their director is now empowered, right, to be their best and represent their team and the work that they do in a way that's different than maybe they had an opportunity to do before. In addition to that, and I think also very important, and Rana was at the city for a lot of this work when it started, was we created an opportunity initially in 2018 for a group of leaders in the organization that were nominated by their peers to take part in a leadership development program called Onward. And we started that program in 2018. And we hadn't had that before. And I know that sounds crazy because we're an organization of over 1,300 people, but we hadn't necessarily had that before, at least prior to us starting in 2018. And that was important for a couple of reasons. But just as an example, one of the things that this cohort of individuals came up with as part of the projects that they needed to identify that they wanted to work on was an overhaul of our performance review system. And our performance review system had been the same for who knows how long, maybe since, the 50s, I don't know, 50s or 60s.
No, I was going to say 60.
Yeah, it was rough, right? Very dictator-like performance review system. Marty Hoffman in the audience probably remembers this. At any rate, it took that group of individuals working across the organization to elevate the need for, just really an implosion of the system and a redo. And the importance of that was, in the past, without the leadership of the mayor and the mayor's office supporting that work, it wouldn't have went anywhere. And so that was really important, I think, as a showcase to the organization that we are ready and we're willing to try new things and do new things to evolve well-being within our organization, and ultimately to hold people accountable, but in a way that is true to themselves and true to the values of the organization itself. So the beauty of working at the city of Sioux Falls is that we typically are all service-minded and service-oriented. You wouldn't necessarily pick a career with the city of Sioux Falls in civil service unless you had a heart for serving people. And so our performance management system needed to lean into that in a different way than what it had before. And I think they've been successful. Our HR team, along with this cohort from this Onward Leadership Development Program, worked for almost 2.5 years along with Rana to develop the new system, to develop leadership competencies that we could actually hold people accountable to and that support our values and our vision for the city of Sioux Falls. And that has been a tremendous lift, but also a shift in the culture and tone of the organization. And we haven't implemented it to the degree that everyone is feeling that quite yet, but we're getting closer. And so I'm really proud of the work that we've done there. Ultimately, though, that combined with the investments that we're making in our executive team, the culture has started to shift again in a really positive direction. which I think is, again, why it's so important to create the conditions, right? To allow for those changes to happen and to allow for people to reinvest in themselves and in their teams.
Can you share, I think everybody would love to hear a little bit more about what you mean by peak performance at that executive team. Like, give us something we can touch and feel that, you know, people from the audience in the group could actually take with them to think about or talk about in their organizations that they could do.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Rana actually helped develop our
that time.
peak performance
Yeah.
program at the
That-
time.
That was you, that was yours.
It was new to the organization though. And I had an opportunity to experience this in the interim before coming back to the city. I worked for a short amount of time at Raven Industries, and they have a very intensive peak performance program. And they believe ultimately that if you're operating at your peak, it's part of their organization's value proposition, right? So they are going to be able to be more productive, hit more goals financially if their people are operating at their peak. And they have a specific program that they utilize for that, where it addresses the entire person, right? Spiritually, emotionally, mentally, and physically. So if you're operating at your peak in all of those areas, then ultimately you most likely are contributing value to the organization in a way that's going to lead to success for them. So what we did at the city was we focused on the executive team with respect to a peak performance program. Our directors hadn't even heard of that before. And so it was new to all of them, and we challenged them to come up with a couple of goals, right? I remember the first meeting that we had with respect to this concept, and we asked them to share their goals. And I had several comments from people, you know, behind the scenes saying, do we really have to share our goals in front of each other? I'm like, just pick one, come on, right? But ultimately what it led to, and what I've received a lot of comments on from that team, is it forced them to take a step out of their work and think about how they, as a human being, right, needed to continue to develop themselves in order to lead their teams and our organization differently and better into the future. And so we had a quarterly kind of development plan that we went through, where we focused on bringing in an individual actually from Great Life to talk to us about physical fitness, eating well, and how that actually contributes to who you are at work, right? And how that can actually help you in your career. We also brought in Joe Rutten, who helped us from a spiritual aspect, connect and recenter. And our executive team had never had an opportunity to do that before. And I had by far and away the most comments from our team about your talk, Joe. So I'm plugging Joe over here in the audience, but he's amazing. And ultimately, I think we all need an opportunity to do that in our day-to-day work, is find a way of recentering and remembering why we're doing what we're doing and who we are matters to the work that we're in and why we're doing it. So ultimately, our focus initially with our executive team was that peak performance program was focused on them, right? So it was focused on the individual. Now we're in this team building continuum, I would say, where I'm trying to bring the team together in really meaningful and thoughtful ways so that they are clicking and connected in a way that moves the organization forward, unlike what we've had an opportunity to do before. And that's important for us because we have 3 new directors, just as an example, over the last year due to retirements. And so the team needs to be rebuilt again, right? And they need that opportunity outside of the day-to-day challenges that we need to solve to lean into each other and build the relationships to move the team and the organization forward long-term. And then that will evolve further after we get through this team building year, and it'll be more externally focused within the departments themselves, and we'll challenge them to develop their peak performance plans as the leader of their departments, which I think is also really important. And I don't know if everyone in this audience understands how we're structured organizationally, but just as an example, our police chief has over 300 people on his team. which is more than the family-owned business that I worked for while I was outside of the city of Sioux Falls. And that's essentially a small business that he's running, that he's operating, but with just maybe a different lens and a different set of values than what other small businesses have external to the city. And so we have to give those folks resources to develop themselves and prepare themselves for what's ahead. And it's really challenging because we don't always know what that's going to be.
We have no idea what the next thing will bring. So what I love about what you're saying is both of you have made it clear, and you both have taught me this and helped me to grow immensely. So I'm ever appreciative for that, right? You surround yourself with great people who can build you up and make you better. And that's a reciprocal relationship. So leadership isn't about you, but it starts with you. And so when we are at our best, that is an energy that transfers. So what I really appreciate about what you're both saying is that you're creating the future. You're growing the strength of today, but by creating the conditions, making this a mindset, making it a priority, and truly understanding at the very core of it that this is foundational. You are building. And the future is, wow, what will that look like? What will that look like?
One brick at a time, right?
What's that?
It's like building one brick at a time, laying a road.
Totally.
It's a journey, and you know what you're building is strong to withstand whatever comes your way.
Yep. So we know that people with high career well-being are 50% more likely to be thriving in life overall. So what a beautiful way to create the conditions with that overhaul of the performance review system to turn it into a conversation of care. And it's not just about getting the business done, but it's developing you. And when we develop you, you develop a better us. And that's just a cascade that keeps going. So I want to tell you, and again, we would encourage everybody to grab this book, The 5 Essential Elements, but there's 3 recommendations for boosting career well-being. So we're talking about burnout. We talk about resilience. We've got some fatigue, and how we led through the pandemic is not the same way that we lead out of it, especially with everything that we have going on today. It's not the same. It's different. And so now is the time to really think about these incredible words of wisdom and examples that you guys are giving about how to do that well, how to really do that well. So they talk about 3 recommendations for boosting career well-being. And here's a great tip that you both have alluded to, and that is to be able to use your strengths every day. Do your people have the opportunity to use their strengths every day? It's literally that simple. That is a burnout prevention method. That's simple. I get to do work that's meaningful and purposeful and has a goal, and I get to use my strengths each day. And number 2, identify someone with a shared mission who encourages your growth, and spend more time with that person. Just think about that for a moment. Like, what does that mean in your team? What does that mean in your organization? How can you build that culture and that leader's mindset that does that? And number 3, opt into more social time with the people and teams you enjoy being around. So yes, Jen, we need to have fun at work.
We do need
We
to have
do.
fun.
And we need your pep talk every day when you drive into work, or to play it at the next staff meeting, maybe. This is my friend Jen Reese. And she's like, that would be awesome. Yes.
An idea for a new podcast.
Yes.
Oh, yes. Oh, Joe's in.
Watch out, Adam Cox.
Yes.
With his common sense on the prairie. Maybe we start with a pep talk. Blow it up.
He would love that. He would love that. So social time is key. Social time, give your people time to connect. So that gets us into like this employee experience thing.
Yep.
So how do we craft an employee experience that really embeds and embraces well-being, that helps to support that and continue that, to go and grow in ways that maybe as the leader you don't even see or feel. It's just happening, and all of a sudden you get this great story. Aren't those the best? The best. You create the conditions, and then you start to hear these stories about how people are just rocking it. Like that's exciting. Then you know you're making some progress. So that employee experience is really important. No doubt, right? We're on a war on talent. There's no doubt. Every conversation I have with businesses each week are about, help me with this. How can I do this better? How can I do this different? What am I missing? What else can I do? And again, just all of the conversation and just the little bit that we started with this morning to lay the context is, people want to work in an organization that cares about them as a whole person. It's all gray. There's no hard stop between work and life. It's work-life integration, not necessarily balance. So they're looking for this employee experience that helps you attract and retain. So tell us, Jen, some of the things that come to mind and that you're leading and doing at the bank.
Absolutely. So many of you are wondering, okay, what am I going to do with this when I leave, right? How am I going to put this into action? It's all great to talk strategic perspective, how the leaders cast the vision, how you provide hope along the way, but what's the no kidding? What am I going to do with this? And I know you're people of action, you're here because you desire more. You want to be better. And I'll give you some wise words, and many of you have notebooks. I would write this down if you haven't had this belief system before. Start where you are, do what you can. Again, it goes back to choice. Start where you are, do what you can. Try not, as hard as it is, because we're human, try not to compare yourself to where others are on this journey or where other organizations are. Steve Jobs of Apple always said, I don't compete with Dell or IBM. We compete with ourselves. Focus on what you can control. And great, I do believe in abundance. I believe that great things happen to great people. It's why we're here today. Bringing together this collective mindset for the movement that is happening, right? You don't get there without the belief system. And so the beautiful thing is there's many resources out there. Don't feel you have to do it alone. Sitting next to me, talk to two of these teammates right now. You don't have to do this alone. This is not a journey that you have to do it by yourself. I, in fact, think it's better when you share it, because now you're more accountable to the path in which you want to create. But there are resources out there. And so having a growth mindset that you can get there, knowing that each day will come with its own challenges, be okay with that. You have to have the courage to even approach it. You have to have the heart to want to stay in it. And you have to have the energy to persevere. So think about what that looks like for you. And if you haven't done the hard work of defining it for yourself, how are you going to ask a team or an organization to do it? So commendable work you're doing, Erica, with your team. There's a book out there called The Advantage, and I believe that people should be reading books like Wolves Eat Meat, and I don't care how you consume it. Whether it's podcasts, whether it's digital, whether it's in print, but I do believe that. And I think it broadens your perspective of what creating your own new reality is. So when we were in hot pursuit of defining, I forgot the book, The Advantage by Patrick Lencioni. It's one worth picking up, great YouTube clips that help you understand the power of your team, but guess who's on that team? Right. So owning your own understanding of how you need to grow in all these elements, but you yourself have to develop that first, not without great support. I don't know how many hugs I gave out this morning as people are walking in the room because of the impact each of you have had on my life, who've made me who I am in order to show up and be the leader I need to be in the organization I've been called to be in. So the employee experience really is a system. And it's an evolving system, but it's a map. It's a roadmap. People want to know how to get there, right? Your people are hungry to know, well, how do I get to there? You have to develop this out. And it's right. Angie's sitting in here, who was a great thought partner with me through this as we developed this over the last 3 years at First National. And it really is a strategic perspective that boils down to operational understanding. So you can pick it up. It's not off the shelf. It's very much diagnostic for each position, with each teammate within the bank, but it points the way. You got to have a way forward, right? They have to see that that you're the power they're putting into their everyday is going towards a greater vision mission. Then there's the tactical, the no kidding, let's get it done, right? Let's get her done. There's energy in that. There's fun, there's camaraderie, there's pulling together, knowing you're working towards something that's greater than where you are today. I also believe people are drawn into service, right? You have to provide an opportunity for them to serve in their own unique space, their strengths, and that changes. Be careful not to put someone in a box, right? Again, not telling you anything you don't know, but I would be happy at any point in time if you reached out to our team. We've got great leaders who can share our employee experience in detail. But in an overall perspective, and again, Miranda, this was through much of the work that we did in the creation of our leader life cycles over the years, that you really have to look at where teammates join you along their journey. And some are joining you as a newly hired teammate, but has 20 years of experience. Don't disregard that. They don't have to start at the beginning and you have to have all these check marks to get them there. That will come through time. So I would caution you to just have to have all these things to get to there. Whether it's training, certifications, that type of thing, take the risk, right? Take the risk on a good human who you can develop the skill sets with. But if they have the right character skills and you match it with the competence, just imagine what you can unleash in the organization, that trust that's created, because not only are they a good human, but they show up with those intentions each day and they just perform really well for you. Job well done. We really are focusing in on how to engage, develop, and help our leaders perform. So that's in deliberate training. That's in deliberate coaching. Everyone needs a coach. If you don't have a coach, go find one. If you're not mentoring or you don't have a mentor, go find one. Because I'll say you all are in some way. It's not some grand title that you have to own, but recognize what you bring to the table and share it. It's a sad dog that doesn't wag its tail from time to time, right? So shout it from the rooftops. Be proud of who you've become. And I would say the greatest thing is really understand helping your teammates at the just say lowest level, understand the power that they have to impact a purpose, right? Bringing their best selves to work. When they know that they get to live out their purpose at work, the rest comes together, but not without deliberate and intentional resources. So again, I could get into the nuts and bolts of it, but we really are a Gallup organization and look at each stage as an opportunity to recruit, retain, and the beautiful thing, create succession plans so people see an opportunity for growth. Very much a part of who we are.
So again, it's that structure, right? Like, so to unpack all that big brain brilliance that you just shared, when that employee walks into your door, that's the first step on their experience, on their employee life cycle. And what is it how are you pouring into them and what are you expecting of them? And so you are curating, I think might be a great word to even what you just explained. You're curating what development of mindset, skill set, heart set, and the tool set. Who taught me that? Who taught me that one? To carry them through every age and stage of their career. Yeah.
Well, and that they don't have to do it alone, right? We do have some prescriptive items that just are who we expect you to know and be when you show up to be our teammate. And then we have those that are more diagnostic. Those are the hard things that managers are like, oh, what do I do with this? How do I help them grow? They're kind of here. We got you. We got your back. Right, we'll help you. Let's sit down and have a coaching conversation and really define the ultimate goal. And that goal may change, which is another beautiful understanding when you get to know yourself better and where you're living in the different pillars. So again, identifying your greater why and purpose really helps lift the other pillars in a way that without that, you're probably making smaller gains.
And that's foundational. That's our spiritual purpose well-being, which ties into our career well-being. Erica, do you remember the first session with the leaders when Nick Ovenden came in and talked about purpose with the group? And their minds were like this was a different way to look at the world and a whole different way to look at leadership. And I just have to comment that the appreciation or the vulnerability that that created in your leadership team to help them really become cohesive and come together. But that was really fun for them to be like purpose, but you took that a step further. You had, did you have Rosie Ward come in and talk about my why assessment for each individual leader? Yeah, that's powerful. That's really, that purpose is a great anchor. That purpose helps us be resilient in our mental strength too, in our mental resilience, because that's what we lean into to keep going. I mean, when we talk about well-being and the burnout piece, that which is part of the reason why we're all here too, like how do we move through this? I think it's fair to say, thank you for bringing up mental health, Jen. It's the second chapter of the pandemic, and it's right here. It's right now. It's right in front of us. And that, I don't know that we're fully equipped for this quite yet. We are not fully equipped for this, but I think we can upskill pretty quickly. But Erica, you're really good at the space of mental health a bit. Share some wisdom with us.
Wisdom with respect to mental health. First of all, I'm not trained in mental health, anything related to it. However, a couple of things. I think, and one of the things that we just actually talked about yesterday within the organization is there's such a stigma attached to any conversation around mental health. And that's part of the challenge that we all have, right? Across the nation and within this organization that I work for currently specifically. But I think a way around that is to share stories, right? And all of us have an opportunity to share stories without even using the term mental health that I think impact the people around us and influence the people around us in a really positive way. So just as an example, we have EAP resources through our organization. Many of you probably do as well. And there's a stigma attached to utilizing EAP resources. You know, there's concerns from our employees that somehow whatever they share during that counseling session might get back to their supervisor. It might impact their ability to, receive a promotional opportunity in the future. And so we have so many reasons why we need to be more intentionally focused on just removing the stigma when and if possible. And I'm a big believer in just getting rid of the phrase mental health and just talking about it in other ways, right? It's the same with all of the buzzwords in our organizations and across the nation right now. Oftentimes we overcomplicate the message and we attach the stigma to it that's really unnecessary. And so one of the things that we're going to start doing, you guys, some of my colleagues don't even know this yet, but we're going to start talking about mental health just through story. We're not going to talk, we're not even going to say mental health, because I think that story is ultimately how you impact someone positively moving forward, especially if the story is coming from a leader. And I think that's really powerful. And we need to start doing that more, and not just within our organizations, but within our own circles of friends and family as well, so that they understand that we will support them if they need assistance of any kind, whether it's short-term or long-term assistance. So we've had resources at the City of Sioux Falls for a long time. We've had EAP resource available to the team members in our organization. We've had chaplain services available within our PD and our fire department for a long time. But I think the other piece of this that we haven't necessarily talked about at all is people are lonely and they don't know how to access resources for themselves. And sometimes accessing the resources is really difficult. We just were notified a couple of weeks ago that one of our EAP resources that we contract with is going out of business. They're discontinuing their services at the end of June. And it's really hard to find another agency to contract with this for our team members. And it's just as difficult when you're an individual and you're trying to maneuver or find your way through that system to begin with. So the more that we can do as an organization to make sure that our team members know what resources are at least available, I think the better off ultimately we'll all be. And then I would just encourage all of us to not be afraid to have the conversations, right? The hard conversations, and be vulnerable in doing so. It's interesting because May of 2020, I had a panic attack. Didn't even know what a panic attack was at the time. And I ended up having a panic attack. And I think I shared this with someone that I knew, and she was like, well, gosh, I've had panic attacks for years. And I'm like, really? This is a thing? I didn't even know that other people had this happen to them. But that's because we talk about it so very little. And so we just need to talk more, elevate the conversation, make it relatable to each other, and then help each other get through it. I think there's just a lack of community that people have right now. We're very isolated still, despite the fact that we're connected by devices and sort of settings so much that we have to lean into the opportunities that we have to connect with people in a safe, trusted space where we can walk through these situations and then ultimately feel confident enough about sharing our own stories so that others know how to get the help and resources that they need as well.
So I'm wondering, just unpacking all of the things that we've talked about. You say create a safe space and have the hard conversations. I guess what I would say is it's also the courageous conversations. Have the courage, because when you see something and you don't say something, that's a disrespect to someone, right? That's actually not caring about somebody or for somebody. So in this, like just as an example, creating the conditions, and we think about systems, as you created that performance review system, you're hardwiring in these conversations. You guys do this too, where you're required to sit down with your people and have a real conversation. But that starts with you, right? And recognizing me, but then recognizing that person across from you. And that gives that safe space. We probably need more training on how to do those conversations. How do you start it? How do you have it? Are you guys talking about some of that? Like, how do we upskill our leaders to be able to recognize, to be able to talk about this topic of, let's just call it well-being instead of mental health? I actually appreciate that, because it is the whole person. Yeah.
We are starting to have those conversations about how to upskill folks in our organization. We've had an individual, just as an example, who is working with a team member who has clinically diagnosed mental health challenges. And it is hard. If you've never walked through that situation before, why would you feel prepared on how to say the right things, notice specific triggers, and just provide them even with the resources that they need? And so we certainly need more attention on this topic. And it's evolving, right? It's part of this evolution that our organization is going through. And I think, ultimately we have to constantly be aware of where our team members are at with respect to their well-being. And we get some of that feedback during individual conversations, but we also utilize a tool called Peakon, which is similar to Gallup in terms of, providing our team members with a space where they can be engaged, share their comments on where we're at as an organization or within their own teams, and ways in which that we as an organization can better address them. And we just finished one of our recent surveys, and 40% of the comments that we received back within that latest round of surveys were all related to various challenges that people are having with burnout and mental health. And so we clearly, as an organization, need to step up our game with respect to the resources that we're providing, and ultimately the skill sets that we're providing to our supervisors, our managers, and ultimately just across the organization in general, so that they understand how to help each other through these challenging times that we're in. And it's not just the pandemic, right? It's not just recent events that have even happened. It's the day-to-day work for some of our team members that creates that burnout, and that creates this angst, right? That sometimes leads to mental health challenges. When you see as an officer 800 traumatic events in your lifetime, that's bound to impact you in a negative way. And so you have to seek out resources for yourself in order to ensure that your own well-being is intact and that you're not transferring those traumatic experiences to your family. And so that doesn't, equalize across our organization in the same way that it necessarily does for our officers. But we all have our own stories, right? We all have our own traumatic experiences that impact us throughout our lifetimes, and that all compiles and compounds on each other, and it has to be expressed eventually. And so I think we're seeing the results of a lot of those instances within our team members and our organization. So we have work to do. I think the first step to making progress is at least being aware of the challenge, and we're there.
So I love what you say about if it's going to express itself somewhere, and what we want to do is help people make sure that it doesn't come out sideways. Because when it comes out sideways, then we go the wrong way. So here's what else I love about what you said is don't make assumptions. You need some sort of level of assessment, whether that's through observation, through its a well-being health index, whatever that might be. You've got to assess and keep that consistent assessment going. Yeah, what would you add, Jen?
Well, when you speak of assessment, I brought one of my faves, as you can see, just going back into it. You brought also well-being, but the well-being at work. Don't feel like you know it all. And guess what? The awareness that comes through taking their simple battery instruments in the back, which again are valid and reliable. It's not just off Facebook, but it allows you to do the gut check. After we first launched well-being in our workplace, many, and again, this is my best friends at work, right? It's important to have people who care about you. It's important to have those best friends at work, came to me individually and said, I can't believe how far off I was on X pillar. And it was emotional. But they believed and they trusted that I was a safe place, right? I created that psychological safety. Again, it starts with you, at least in the environment where I can control, and then helped reach out to help them get the resources they needed. It wasn't just me, but they had the courage to come forward. And it was then, once you are aware, you are now responsible leaders. And you have to take some sort of action, whether that action is support, whether that action is stepping up and helping find research. It's limited, right? But you have to be able to be willing to take that step. So having a self-assessment will drive your results forward too. And in the back of each of these, there's a self-assessment tool. I'll relate it to being a net thriving person, leader, before being a net thriving organization. You've got to create the conditions in your own being in order to be able to take this forward and have that passionate persuasion with your teammates to know it's safe to visit with you about this, being vulnerable yourself to share your stories. And we're all at different stages of life. You never know when you're going to hit with the change truck and something significant happens. Be there.
So the purpose piece is definitely a theme of today. And when you are clear in what the purpose of your organization is, you're clear in your own personal purpose, and you see the parlay or the congruence between those two, and you make connections, and you're asking leaders to come from a place of purpose in their conversations with their employees. You're creating a level of psychological safety so that people can talk about things, because as much as leaders need to have the courage to ask those questions, we also have to have the courage to be able to say, I might be suffering a little bit. So how do you invite that conversation? Well, it's by creating this culture of care and this culture of well-being. So we've got a few minutes left here, and we want to be sure to offer, if anyone in the crowd has a question or something that you'd like to ask.
Jen, you mentioned the self-assessment tool. What did you use?
So at the back of the well-being book, there's a simple assessment. It's not where I think there's a gap is it doesn't allow the organization to, if you provide that to all your teammates, for you to see the sum or where everyone is at, but they all have their own gut check to do. And that's where we really tapped into our managers to have those coaching conversations. We do quarterly conversations, which are really around development, not around a direct reflection of performance. It's included, but it's a greater conversation that allows us to open up that space where maybe before in a traditional manager environment, they wouldn't go there. But to be able to give them the skill set, again, we had foundational training for the entire, all of the bank, and have continued to sustain that over the last 3 years in different ways. Recharges, allowing champions to come forward, but they did tell their stories. So I love the emphasis on that, Erica. Thank you for that, because your story matters. And they need to know that they matter at an individual level and how that story comes together as a team level. We all have them. It's just being able to have the courage to share them. So I would say utilizing that assessment as a baseline for individuals. And if you choose to share it with your manager or your best friend at work, great. But it at least allowed the gut check. I was impressed at how many people then went out and bought it for their families. And their families took this on during COVID because they were home together, right? Why not do something where they can have a greater alignment to their family vision and how they choose as a family to live out their operating principles. So that was a cool side effect. Didn't see that coming, that we supported the well-being industry quite well in the assessment. But it was a ripple effect, which it should be. It should be contagious, right?
I'll just add to that. So a different concept, the Wellbeing at Work book is fantastic. If you're looking at it simply through a leadership lens or from a burnout vantage point, another great book is called At Your Best by Carrie Newhoff. And it also has an assessment within it that I think is really valuable. I had that book recommended to me a couple of months ago, and it's probably the first one I've read front to back in a long time. But it's got great tools ultimately, and it's just about a reprioritization of your day based upon your energy levels, what ultimately you need to be doing for your organization and your career, and how you place that in your day. And so I would just encourage you, if you have an opportunity, to check out that book, especially if you're thinking of this conversation through your own lens. It's a really good resource. There's also multiple podcasts on this book if you want to get a flavor for it through a podcast.
Any other questions? Do you have anything? Yeah, go Jackie.
Good morning. Thanks for making this possible, Ariana. And thanks, Jennifer and Erica, for being here and sharing. I have a question for each of you. I did not catch the pillars. The listing of
sure.
the pillars that
Yep.
you referenced. Would you mind repeating those, please?
So career, which is really purpose, right? You got to dig into what these are defined as, and so you can create what that looks like within your teams or organizations. Social, financial. Again, I'll put a plug in for Common Sense on the Prairie is our podcast around that, which provides great financial tools locally. Physical, which is all the dimensions of physical, eating right, taking care, sleep, all those mental health, and community. All those together create a net thriving culture. So it's like a spider web. When you pull on one, something might be out of whack, but tell me the day you get it perfect. It's kind of like balance. Yeah, right. There's give and take in every relationship, and understand there's give and take in this too. So, yeah.
And for Erica, it sounds like the work at the city has been going on for several years now. When the continuum has to continue, but when you have new people come in, clearly that work looks different. Do you have a couple examples you can share of when you're onboarding or making that impression with them? So you don't have to do the work over with a legacy employee. You can do it on the front end, get them landed.
We actually are in the process of instituting an organizational-wide onboarding program. We had onboarding in the past, but it was, the 3-hour overload of benefits and compensation information versus, when Rana actually was with us, there was more of an emphasis on culture, who we are, our values, and that hasn't necessarily discontinued, but that onboarding opportunity needs to be expanded to the point where it's a 90-day, at least process. And I think that's going to give us a lot more opportunity to impact those team members in a more intentional way and thoughtful way that they retain over the course of that 90 days versus just hitting them in 3 hours and saying we're good. So that will be an organization-wide opportunity. And we've not had that in the past, but over the last 3 years, we've heard more and more comments from people that we need that. And a lot of it's because we've had a number of retirements. So we're bringing on more and more people in our organization due to that. And just due to the growth that we're experiencing overall. And those folks haven't been exposed to what our legacy team members have. And so they need to be brought into the fold and understand how they fit and will ultimately within their job scope, help achieve the vision, the values, and the goals of the organization.
Well, as we close up today, I just can't thank enough for the two of you to share your knowledge, your wisdom, your spirit, your passion on this really important topic for ourselves as leaders, for our teams, for our businesses, and for our communities. I think you guys have all heard just from this panel, these are a couple incredible women that I have had a lot of fun co-creating well-being, culture, leadership, and greatness, and incredible communities and teams. So I can't thank you enough for those experiences. And I also just have to say, in the term of plug, I have ventured to this new space in my career to be able to help you do these things. So if I can be of any help, you know where to find me. And I also want to share with you that this Culture Cohort community is going to continue in big, strong ways. Like we've just gotten started. This is our second event. I warmly welcome and invite you into this Culture Cohort community. I'm going to tell you, I've got some pretty fun and exciting things planned for the fall, right here in this same space with more incredible leaders, not just in our community, but across the Midwest. And we're going to keep this conversation going and supporting you and helping you really align those business and human needs so that people can flourish, your organizations can flourish, and our communities can flourish. So this recording we'll send out with also some little fun tips. I captured some of the things we talked about, so I'll be sure that that's in the follow-up so that you can have those resources in case you didn't get them written down. You guys are incredible. Thank you for being here. Thank you, virtual friends, for being here. An incredible thank you again to our sponsors of STI and to HR Asset. You are welcome to stay. There's lots of coffee and food, so you better stay. I'll ship that off to our virtual attendants. I'll somehow get that to you. Okay. Have an incredible, what day is it? Wednesday. Have an incredible Wednesday, everyone. Yeah. Thank you so much.